All right, we just worked on submitting our assignment 5. And now we're going to be adding text to that spot illustration for poster design. And just like our spot illustration had vector line art and then raster color behind, this is going to have vector type design and then raster color for color variations on the type design, just like our color logos, and for a background and border for our poster. It gets into layout because we're combining multiple things together. So we'll have this class introduce you to it. By next class, I want you to have what's called a text blocking sketch. That's going to help you understand what kind of type you're trying to design, how much space you want it to take up. And we'll be working on it through November 6th and November 11th. I want you to notice that when it is due on November 13th is also the first day of individual presentations. So under assignments, you can, or under the unit for individual presentations, you can sign up for your presentation artist and start getting those together. We'll have 2 days of those. All right, and then we go into digital painting, and then we're to our final project, and then we're all done. So we are wrapping up. So these skills we're learning with spot illustration, with vectors and raster together, they're very likely going to be used by you for your final art project, which is worth 10% of your overall grade. So this was the spot illustration. This was my final one using color separation. This was kind of the clean PNG with all digital colors in RGB mode. So this is RGB mode versus CMYK. This was a product example of it. And even though I have type as part of the image, I have ideas for other type I can add to turn it into a full poster or a campaign with both text and imagery. Excuse me. So let's go to that unit and get introduced to this. So we are now looking at type design, which has some similarities and some differences than the kind of vectors we've done so far. So here you can see what's called a text blocking sketch. It's where you have your imagery, but you have to figure out what text you want to put with it and how you want to design it. And then eventually we do a black vector version of that text, a color version of that text, and then a full poster with a background and a border of that text. Type blocking, black text, color text, full poster with background. And it's using the same skills, but towards a different end, right? And there are a lot of digital artists that work almost entirely with typography, with just type design and text layout and type blocking. So here we have some other examples. Sometimes your poster might be heavily text, almost all type design. Their spot illustration was just this simple little cloud that gets put in the middle of it. Sometimes you want your type design to be really, really eye-catching and to be equally as interesting as your illustration. So this kind of splits it in two. This was a past example I did that I couldn't decide what type design I wanted to do, so I did 2 different ones, right, to go with it. Your type, but this is a good example where your type can be inspired, just like your color choices or your line width for your spot illustration can be inspired. So this was inspired by My Little Pony and doing my own kind of vector type version of it. And then I think it works best when your type design isn't wholly separate from your spot illustration, but feels integrated, right? So even though this type was designed separately from the illustration, it works with the shape and the placement of the illustration so it all feels unified as one. Now these are tricky skills, and type design is a completely independent discipline from illustration, right? But let's use some pop culture examples to show you why this is relevant. So when you are doing poster design, which is very different than spot illustration because it's in a locked format, usually rectangular, And it's a set format. You know whether it's going to be like a movie poster or a billboard or a bus ad. You know what that rectangle is. You have to make sure that the people see your imagery and read your text in the same order that you've designed them. First read, second read, third read. So if we use the example of Stranger Things, right? The first thing that Stranger Things really shows you is its type design. And there's this great website for those of you interested in typography and digital type design called Art of the Title. And Art of the Title will take really good motion graphics and type design from different projects, right? And there's just so many that they've covered. And then they'll really break them down. So this is what they did for the sequence of Stranger Things. And they work with the production company. So this is the title sequence. Right. Should probably make it so the music doesn't disqualify my YouTube. And it's all about just the movement of this type design. And you can see that they want an 80s look, so they're using the dissolve filter, they're using an inner glow and an outer glow. They're doing opacity shifts. And it's not till the end of that title sequence, when it all kind of locks together. And this is what a type designer does. Not only do they design the letter forms or modify the letter forms, but they decide on the spacing between the letter forms. It's what's called kerning. The kerning is the spacing between the letter forms on one line. The spacing between the lines of type is called leading. L-E-A-D, like the metal. So kerning and leading. And how do they make this look really kind of anxious and off-putting and anxiety-producing? By making the kerning uncomfortably close. It's so close that the G has to flatten out for the N. The A and the R mold together. The E and the R at the end is like a knife going into the back of that R. So it's very tense. Same thing with the G here, with the S and the T, like intentional, what are called tangencies. Tangencies in design are uncomfortable, when things are uncomfortably close to touching. So, that's one example. How can I explain this? So this is how you play with kerning and leading in type design. With all these approaches, right? Now, the type design matters too. So if you do those same choices with a kind of a bubbly typeface, it doesn't have the same effect as this kind of sharp-edged Gothic typeface. And that's really subtle, but that's how it works. And then color separation is added onto this for that vintage effect. And we'll talk about my exhaustive explanation of it. I introduced it to you at the end of the last assignment. But this will go through all the different ways that it works in our visual culture today. From integration uses like Into the Spider-Verse, to printing choices, to just how the actual color mixing occurs, right, in different ways. All right, let's look at the assignment. Some details. The first thing you need to do is understand how your type is going to be added with your spot illustration. And these are called blocking sketches. And because we're designing our text, these are going to be text blocking. And so you start with what you've already designed. So I'm going to start with, like here we have Kyle Lambert's thumbnails, his blocking thumbnails for the second season of Stranger Things. He knew the key art that was going to be used, and so he had to design the type to go with it. And this is ultimately what he did. He kind of integrated into this spot here. So that it's much more about the illustration, and really the type is almost a third read in there. You see this, you see the creepy kind of pumpkin things in the front, and then you see the type treatment. But some type designers make text their whole thing, right? And they will do blocking sketches with a certain phrase or a certain type solution, and then figure out different ways to design it until they set on they're finished. But most of the time, type is designed to go with imagery, right? Whether it's photographic, whether it's illustrated. These are two different artists that I've gotten to work with that are experts at this. So Akiko Sterenberger, she does independent poster design, has won lots of awards for it, does the illustrations and does the type to go with it. And sometimes it's really standard, and sometimes it's incredibly customized to look like it's wrapped around the finger, right? Shepard Fairey, who did the Obama Hope poster, started in graffiti and street art design, but is always augmenting and elevating their illustrations with their type choices. This is a past student example. This was their spot illustration. This is the type design they added to go with it. Notice how it kind of matches the personality of the illustration, enhances it, and explores the space. So how are we going to do this? This is what you need to do by next class. You're going to choose the type you want to go with your illustration. I've kind of changed my mind, but this is what I was thinking initially. That kind of thing. This is actually what I've decided. For the optimistic one, underneath my vote megaphone, I'm going to show, I'm going to turn it into I voted, and then I'm going to show you're welcome. I know it's backwards, but that's my text blocking sketch. Like a little flag that's wavy that says you're welcome. So really quickly in these last few minutes, what I'm going to do is just what I want you to do before next class. Once you're happy with your spot illustration, you've got it posted, just open up the PNG of it. And then expand your canvas size. This is just on the PNG. So it was 11 by 14. I'm going to make it 16 by 20. It's now poster size. And then on a new layer, I'm going to do my text blocking. And I'm just going to sketch in. You can do this by hand as well. It doesn't need to be digital. But I want to change this into an I voted sticker. Or I voted image. So I need an I and a D that kind of match the style. And then I'm going to do this wave underneath where it says, you're welcome. So it's called blocking because you draw the big rectangle first, and then you divide that up into your text. All right. So that's going to be the text blocking sketch. And that's all you need. So I'm going to put white behind this for now. And then I'll just save it as a JPEG. And that's the first part of this assignment 6. But a lot of thought will need to go into it. Like, what words do you want? And where do you want them to take place with your image? And I'm going to save it as assignment 6, text blocking sketch. All right, thank you guys. I'll see you on Wednesday. Take care. All right, see you Wednesday. Take care.